Hey, I wanted to talk to you about understanding your homeschool laws. Homeschooling is legal in all of the Americas, from Canada, the US, Mexico, many other overseas countries as well. But it's important that when you're thinking about homeschooling for the first time or homeschooling high school, that you consider what your local laws say, because what you don't know can hurt you, and what you don't know can affect how well you're able to homeschool with freedom. So let me explain. The first step is to check your state law and see what it does say. The thing about state laws or local homeschool laws is they tend to not change over time. Public school laws, they change constantly. Every year they're adding things. You have to have 100 hours of volunteer work, or mandating a senior project or whatever. But homeschool laws, once they're implemented, tend to remain very stagnant and not changing. Within that homeschool law, you will have lots of flexibility. But what you're trying to do is make sure that you do obey what is required by your state law, so that your children will have any opportunity in the future. Demonstrating that you've obeyed state law is going to be very important if you want your child to serve in the armed forces, the military of any kind, police, all of those situations. They do require adherence to state laws, but only those state laws for homeschooling, not the state law for public school. You see, what will often happen to me is people will come to me and say, I'm going to start homeschooling. Where do I get the curriculum? Like there's one place. Well, there isn't one place when you're homeschooling. There's only one place to get the curriculum when you're public school. They only have that one curriculum that's supposed to fit all of these children. And that's not the case when homeschooling. Or people will say, where do I sign up? And generally speaking, you don't sign up for homeschooling. You just declare you're homeschooling. Sometimes there's a piece of paper. In many states, it's called the Declaration of Intent to Homeschool, or Declaration to Homeschool. And you're not asking anybody's permission. You're just saying, I'm opting out of public school. We are homeschooling, right? And so you want to make sure that you've obeyed that law, because that demonstrates your child is not truant from public school, but is instead officially homeschooling, and that you're in charge of their education. The second step is a little more nuanced. You're trying to recognize the limitations of the law. Okay. So, for example, I homeschooled in Washington. In Washington State, we have 11 required subjects, all of which are very common sense, right? But what the law doesn't say is how much you have to teach of those 11 subjects, only that you have to teach it sometime between first grade and 12th grade. And it doesn't say how much or how often or every year or anything, right? And so you want to recognize the limitation of that state law. The other thing is, if it does require something of you, that state law, maybe that you wouldn't have thought about doing before, usually you can do that with freedom. Okay. So again, for example, in Washington State, we have a requirement to teach what's called occupational education, or teaching children about jobs they might want to have. And so the freedom that we have as homeschoolers in Washington is to meet that requirement in a very natural way. I tell people, wait until your child gets a job, count the number of hours on a job. That will determine the credit value. And then you put that on their transcript as occupational education. And it's okay that your child got paid to do that. Now, other states will have other requirements. Maybe they'll require health, I've seen required, or let's see, technology. I've seen technology requirements, or geography mapping. I've seen that as a requirement. But it doesn't usually tell you that you have to use this curriculum, or teach this much, or teach it this way. So you can embrace the freedom within your state law and recognizing the limitation. And you can just choose any curriculum that you want. You could teach geography in the context of American history. You could teach health in the context of your PE class. And so we have freedom. Now, one of the biggest problems I think that parents have, especially when they're new to homeschooling, is they'll try to figure out what are the requirements for high school. Okay. And so they Google it. What are the requirements for high school? And Google will very helpfully give you the requirements for public high school students. You don't have to meet those requirements. And in fact, it can feel like beating your head against the wall if you try to meet those requirements. And I encourage you is to instead think about what is going to work for you and for your family, what makes sense for you to keep. Remember that if your child is trying to get a job, have a career without college, they generally don't really care what the public school law is. They really don't care whether you had this requirement met or that requirement or had 100 hours of community service. They're looking at your resume. You have a good resume. Okay. Same thing is sort of true with colleges. When you're applying for a college, they want students from all 50 states and multiple countries as well. And so they don't really care about the state public high school requirements either. And instead, you can embrace the freedom knowing that these colleges will see students from every state. Each state has different requirements for high school, requirements for graduation, requirements for whether or not you weight grades, etc. And you don't have to meet those. You have complete freedom. You can use whatever curriculum or methods fit you. You can do what is best for your child. You can lean on your understanding of your child's learning style, your child's abilities, how far they can, how fast they can learn math or science or foreign language. And so you can teach in a way that works for them. So again, I just encourage you, yes, to obey your state law, do what is required by your state law, but keep that maximum flexibility that you have among homeschooling, because that's what leads us to our success. Statistically, homeschoolers score significantly higher on standardized test scores than public school students do. Public school students tend to score in the 50th percentile. Homeschoolers tend to score in the 80th percentile nationally. Part of the reason for that is because we can match the needs and learning styles of our children. And so if you delegate to the public school by using school at home, a curriculum that they have chosen, what happens is they may not be learning to the best of their ability unless you're homeschooling independently. And so I encourage parents to homeschool independently with flexibility, allowing for the maximum amount of freedom that we have as homeschoolers so that we can provide a superior education for our children. And in the meantime, be parenting them, shaping and molding their character so that they turn out to be not only well educated, but wonderful adults that you would actually like to spend time with. Okay. Well, I hope that helps and that you understand both state law and the limits of your state law. Have a great day.